We love Zencaster because it allows us to record the audio for our podcast and create the video segments we use for our weekly Sister Scoop episodes. Zencaster has helped us make content capture simple.
It's now super easy to record a podcast with Zencaster. Log in using your browser and start recording a high-quality podcast right away. Record studio quality sound and up to 4K video with your guests, and feel a sense of zen knowing Zencaster's multi-layered backups ensure you always have your recordings in the highest quality, even if the connection is unstable.
If you've thought about podcasting before and realized that you need a lot of different tools and services, those days are over. With Zencaster's all-in-one podcasting platform, you can create your podcast in one place and distribute it to Spotify, Apple, and other major destinations.
Just go to Zencaster.com/pricing and use our code SistersAssembled, and you'll get 30% off your first month of any Zencaster paid plan. We want you to have the same easy experiences we do for all of our podcasting and content needs. It's time to share your story.
Katie and I are always hungry, and one snack we both love is beef jerky. That's why we're so excited to tell you about one of our favorite jerky brands, Matt Hat Jerky.
Matt Hat's delicious taste makes it a great snack, and the variety of flavors, including original, black truffle, and my personal favorite, roasted garlic, means there's a flavor for everyone. Plus, it's local to the area where we grew up in, which we just love.
Use the link in the show notes below to get some Matt Hat Jerky for yourself, and make sure to use our coupon code SistersAssembled for 10% off. Hello and welcome to Sisters Assembled, your home for all things MCU. We are continuing our coverage of X-Men 97 this week, and we'll be focusing on episode 5, which means, of course, if you've not watched episode 5 yet, you should pause, go watch episode 5, come back. This is your final spoiler warning before we dig and dive deep into all things related to this episode. So with that out of the way, I'm going to toss it over to Katie, and she's going to get us started.
Well, so obviously I wasn't here last week, guys. So I have returned. But from what I just asked Taylor of, seems like she pretty much predicted the entire episode before it even happened, because Wolverine got his claws back. We got the adamantium back, which, I think we said from episode 3 or was 2 or 3, which are 1. I don't even remember the order.
I think it was 1 because
was it the first
he was
one?
In the future. Yeah, he was in the future group.
So I'm going to be honest. The timeline of where we're at with people, I'm still confused. I don't entirely know where everybody is at all times. So
everybody should be back in the 90s now.
That's what I think, yes. Or that's where I thought. To be fair, I only just got to watch 4 today as well. So I had to watch them back to back, which is not helpful to some of that issue.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, now that everybody is back for the most part, because I didn't get to talk about last week's episode, but back for the most part, I mean, I think we could all agree, we knew very early on he wasn't going to keep the weird little bone claws. They're not really anybody's favorite thing to look at. Let's be real. They're really ugly looking. And also we all know the Wolverine to have the adamantium skeleton. That is just who he is. That's part of it. That's a huge factor of who he is.
There's also a reason I'm not a doctor. It's because I don't really want to see exposed bone. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why I'm not a doctor, but exposed bone is definitely one of them.
Right. I really, every time he kind of put his little skewers up, I was like,
yeah,
I'm so good. Those don't, that's gross. Thank you. So I think we all knew, we were okay, well, obviously as cool as it was that Magneto pulled his skeleton out of him last season, which was so freaking cool. Not for him, but it was cool. We knew it had to get reversed. And honestly, this is what I really do appreciate about animation, because again, you can do these storylines, and the one thing that comic book readers will always say is there's never a real death. Nothing is ever permanent, and everything can be undone. And it's because in the comics, that's exactly how 90% of stories go. There's never real death, and anything can be undone. So I love animation because it's just easy to do that, and you don't overthink it.
Yeah, I definitely think that, this episode reminded me a lot of the Storm Breakout episode 1.5 that we got last season.
But I found it more enjoyable than her episode.
I mean, there were more mutants in this one, which I think was and a lot more Easter eggs that I was able to pick up on, which I think was fun because it was kind of like a scavenger hunt. But my point just being like she lost her powers obviously last season and she spent an episode and a half trying to get them back. She does. To your point, it reversed what seemed like a major character turning point. I think it also, one of the things that I've liked about these breakaway episodes is it's given the opportunity to like spotlight certain characters. I know the Jubilee one we didn't love last season, but then, you know, we also were able to see how it led to some of her growth this season. So I think, you know, in light of that, it's like, oh, you see why that was important for her to be able to become the baddie that we're seeing now. And not that, you know, Wolverine needed to learn how to become a baddie because he obviously was, but it's cool to be able to like spend time on, you know, remembering his background and the characters that are so central to him and his story. I mean, you really brought out like so many of the characters that are so central to Wolverine specific stories. I mean, you had obviously Sabretooth, you had, oh my gosh, Omega Red. There were just so many characters that were, you know, so cool to see that we don't typically get to, they're usually villains, but also that you don't spend a lot of time on them unless you're doing a Logan specific story, because when you have the rest of the X-Men, it's more about their interpersonal, you know, conversations or, you know, the larger overarching storyline. I will say, coming out of last week, I was like, oh my God, we're going to take this. Like, I knew, obviously.
Yeah.
Based on the title that we were going to, and the end credit scene that we were going to take this side quest. But I was like, I can't believe we're going to take this side quest right now. And now I get that you need the side quest to have Wolverine, you know, at full capacity. But I was like, oh, no, I just want to know what's happening with Apocalypse and like what the fallout is going to be for Magneto and all of the things that happened to him last episode.
Yeah, it's funny because I kind of struggle with like, part of me was like, it could have been a half episode. And then we were following the main storyline elsewhere, like on the second half of it. Like there was part of me that was like, yeah. But then it is funny because I had to watch them. So from my perspective, guys, I've now watched 1 through 3 together and then 4 and 5 together. So I've watched it in chunks, right? And I will say it's kind of funny because having watched 4 and going directly into 5, it's actually almost worse than sitting on it for a week because it's actually more jarring. I almost skipped the end credit on accident because I always check, but I genuinely like, you know when you like go to check but you never expect anything, so you just like kind of go to click anyway, like that's kind of what I was doing. And I was like, hold on, there actually like is something there. And so the end credit didn't really do anything for me because I did go right into 5. So like it wasn't like a like, you know, I just was like, oh cool, Black Widow, A. Like that was literally the biggest part of that for me. And then I went right into 5 and I was like, where are we? Like it was actually almost more jarring because you just have like this insane thing happen in episode 4. And then you're like, and anyway, here's Wolverine with his own little like side quest team doing like.
But didn't they do that last season? Coming off of the Genosha genocide, it went right from Genosha to the entire episode with Storm and Forge. Like it was Life Death Part 2. I just
watched season 1 and I'm not remembering. I might have skipped it.
I'm almost positive it was like Remember It and then Life Death Part 2. Because I remember being like hysterical.
I don't think so.
I'm almost positive because I remember watching episode 5 because I watched the whole season in one day to rewatch it. Yeah. And I watched up to episode 5, was hysterically crying as one does. And then I remembered what the next episode was and I was like, no, I actually don't want to watch this right now. Like I need to like wait. I'm almost positive that's what they did.
Life Death Part 2 was split.
No.
Because remember,
it was part 1. It was the Motendo episode.
Yeah, but my point is like it was a half an episode. So I still think we got. I'm pretty sure we did.
Life Death Part 2 was an entire episode, and because remember, Storm got an episode and a half. It was Motendo and Life Death Part 1.
I don't think so.
Were together, and then Life Death Part 2.
No, because I didn't skip an entire episode.
Well, then you must have skipped Life Death Part 1.
What do you mean?
Life Death Part 1 is the beginning of Storm's story.
Yes, I know. That's episode 3.
Yeah, you must have skipped
the Mojo episode.
Yeah.
Right. Then we have episode 4 and 5. 5 is the Genosha episode. And then I'm pretty sure 6 is the other, like, it's a split episode. It goes back and forth. I'm pretty sure.
I'm almost positive. Actually, I'm going to look it up in real time.
Yeah,
I'm going to look it up in real time.
Say, look it up right now because this is going to annoy me. And I don't remember. The only episode I remember being like, I should have skipped this, but I didn't, was episode 3 because I was like, I don't need to watch this right now. Like, I was
right.
Follow.
Season 1, episode 6 is Life, Death, Part 2.
The whole episode.
It's called Life, Death, Part 2. I don't know what the whole thing was.
And you're telling me they don't talk about Genosha at all. It only follows Storm and Forge?
I'm almost positive because at the end of the episode, that's when she sees the news and she has to leave after she got her powers back.
I don't think you're right. I think it goes back.
Maybe there's a little bit of other stuff, but it's like really very focused on Storm. Because I remember being like, oh my, and then I remember thinking when I was rewatching, being like, oh my God, I can't believe we did this last year when it was a weekly release, that we had the whole experience on Genosha and then got this, which was it was a good episode, but it was like a total step away. And then because the next episode after that is where, that's when Rogue goes on her like mission where she like meets Cap.
Yeah, but when do they go to Genosha? Pretty sure that's happening during episode 6.
I don't know.
I think you're wrong.
All I'm saying, no, because I was right that
I think it's split episode though. I think they go back and forth.
It's not split the same way that Motendo and Life, Death Part 1
No, that's not what I was saying. I never said that. I said I think it's both episodes though. It's not
either way.
Oh my God.
My point still stands that we had a major character death and then a lot of the episode was focused on a different character in a very different storyline.
That's fair. But that's fair.
We don't need a but. We're getting off track. We are literally getting so far off track. Refocus the mind.
That.
Okay. Anyway, but yeah, I definitely think that it was. I understand why in the order of operations it needed to happen this way, but it was definitely like now I'm really ready for episode 6 to be like, all right, let's talk about the fallout now. And, you know, we've only got 4 more episodes, sorry.
I was to say, I was like, wait.
Math is hard. So, well, I was thinking 9 minus 6. But anyway, we've only got 4 more episodes. We still have to fight Apocalypse in the 90s because he's still coming to the 90s. We have to reunify the X-Men. We have to deal with the fact that X-Factor and X-Force are still out there not getting along.
Right.
We have to, you know, potentially deal with, I know something we talked about last week was like the fallout of what might happen with public perception with the X-Men just up and leaving because the public doesn't understand that it wasn't their choice, you know? So there's a lot that I think we still have to rectify in 4 episodes. So I'll be curious how that happens, especially because we know we're getting, you know, oh my gosh, Gambit as the, what are they?
The Horseman.
Thank you. Horseman Gambit. I was like, there's a word. And I kept trying to say swordsman, and that wasn't the right word. Horseman Gambit, so we know that's coming. There's a lot that we still are expecting this season that with 4 episodes is going to be an interesting challenge.
Yeah, I mean, there's always an episode during every season or like every like whatever. I mean, even in the OG, there's like the stupid Mojo ones. I mean, I enjoy the Mojo ones usually.
I do not enjoy the Mojo ones.
I know you don't. But I do. And I have to say, like, because there's always those, they're kind of palate cleansers. Honestly, I didn't mind this episode. I couldn't stand Storm and Forges because it was slow. This episode, there was a lot going on. And I think I really liked it for that reason. And I do think I just initially was confused because I was like, I just don't really understand where this team came from. And like the side quest. Obviously, then we come to understand it's because Logan's like, yeah, so I'm actually using this as kind of a ruse to go get my adamantium back, which I think isn't entirely shocking. Like we kind of started the episode by saying, I think we knew that was coming. I do think it's kind of, I'm a little shocked he wasn't just honest about it, especially with Morph. Obviously, that's kind of driven a wedge between them now because he lied. And I don't think Morph would have thought any lesser of him if he wanted to get the adamantium back. Like, I don't really think, I mean, we see that those two throughout, especially season 1 and season 2, like they have a great relationship. They're clearly like best buds. Like, And to even Morph's point, when I was taken by Sinister, and for those of you who don't remember, that literally happens in like the second episode of the OG show.
And then Morph doesn't come back until like
For
way later.
Long time. And I was okay with that because Morph at the time, when the version of Morph they had in the OG show, freaked me out. Didn't like the animation around that. So I'm all good with where I'm at now with this Morph. I think they're cool. But
can we also talk about Morph's outfit this episode? Because they were slaying.
Oh, yeah.
So good. I was like, every time they were on screen, I was like, look at you. You are just killing it.
No, but like, I love Morph. I think they're hilarious. So it's like, I was glad to see them appear. And again, they have such a good friendship with Logan. But I think the whole episode was trying to really wrap my head around why Logan wasn't just being honest. I didn't know if it was a pride thing or what exactly it was that it came to, that I could understand why he wasn't being honest with like Sabretooth and Lady Deathstrike and like them. That made sense to me. That's almost like a vulnerability that he doesn't want to share. But it was interesting because we've seen him and Morph have interactions before that I do feel like are more heart-to-heart moments, that I was a little thrown off that he really essentially tricked his best friend and lied to them and clearly like severed this relationship in a way. Like, I'm not going to say that it's not possible for it to come back. But I think when you betray someone's trust, it's very difficult for that to be fully, kind of put back together.
Well, not to mention, this is also the same Morph that sat at Logan's bedside while he was healing from what Magneto did to him. So, to your point, they have such a deep bond, these two. They've helped each other through some of the worst moments, in their lives. And it shouldn't be a surprise that Logan wants his adamantium back, right? Like, I just, to your point, it doesn't make sense that he wouldn't share that with someone who he's been able to speak so openly about before, or openly to before. And I think too, like, if he had shared that with Morph would have been 100% on board, even with keeping it from the others, right? They were the only two X-Men on that ship. Everybody else, yes, mutant, but not X-Men. So there is a level of like, you can understand why the X-Men would keep something from people who they may not fully trust. I mean, Logan has a very fraught relationship with some of these people. So it's like, I would not want to share, that I don't have my adamantium either, because even Sabretooth, when he finds out, makes fun of him for it. And it's not just making fun, it's that, you understand that beyond just the jab is the literal understanding that without the adamantium, yes, Wolverine is still skilled and he's still deadly, but the adamantium helps him be stronger. Yeah. And so it's going to be harder if he needs to subdue a Sabretooth to do so without that. And it makes both him and Morph more vulnerable to someone betraying them, but instead Logan betrayed Morph. And I think it'll be interesting to see their relationship over the next, half a season, because I've really liked them a lot. Morph probably has my favorite mutation, I think, out of anyone. Like, it's the most useful. You actually don't have to choose a mutation at all. At any given time, you can be any mutant you want. And I love their character. So, and I love their relationship with Logan. I think that was I'm glad they focused on that this episode, because I think, it's something that we've seen, hinted at or, implied. And, there have been smaller conversations where you understand the depth of the relationship, but to have an entire episode that really hinges on that relationship and the evolution of it, I think was cool, because oftentimes, I'm like front row seat with my popcorn for the Summers Family Saga, but like, I'm not always thinking about the relationship between Morph and Wolverine, even though it is such an interesting relationship and one of the more one of the stronger, I think, friendships within the unit, kind of akin to like a Storm and Jean. Like, those two you saw in season 1, they had such that beautiful sisterly bond. Well, Morph and Wolverine also have a really strong bond. It was nice to get to see that, put in the spotlight a little bit.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I also think we don't get to see a lot of Morph often, I feel.
Right.
I think we got a lot of focus on the character at that beginning of the original show because they were taken. Yeah. So while the character itself didn't have the focus, I guess. It was kind of the concept of the character to everybody
Like
else.
their absence was
Yeah,
almost a character.
Yeah. And then I do think when Morph initially returns, because obviously they are corrupted by Sinister, and there's like a lot, like that's a whole storyline as well. So there is a lot to that when we see it. I will say so far with X-Men 97, Morph has not been at the forefront.
Right.
That's fine. We're telling massive stories in some of these episodes. I mean, Goblin Queen happened last season, Genosha happened, then we have everything that happened with Bastion. Like, we are telling massive, massive stories. Even this season with the time traveling and Apocalypse even just being part of the conversation. Again, we are telling absolutely massive stories. But I do appreciate that we had this episode kind of focus on Morph as a character just as much as it was focusing on Logan, honestly. It was kind of a dual focus, and I appreciated that, because again, we don't get a lot of focus on Morph as a character. I don't think they get a lot of screen time personally, even though I think they're one of the more powerful assets to the team. And I'm not saying that other, X-Men aren't powerful. They all have their contributions in different ways. But to your point, I mean, Morph's abilities make them extremely talented and strong, because they can literally be anything.
Yeah.
And anyone. I mean, I will say every time morphs, I am confused for a split second, because I have to remember that Morph is doing it.
When did that character come here? Like, when did this character come to this thing?
How did the Fantastic Four get here?
I know.
I was like, what is going on? And then I was like, yes, Morph is there every single time. But
I know.
One, I love the cameos that their character brings, but also then I like the fact that they are able to do that. And honestly, they come in pulling the punch, or I shouldn't say not pulling the punches. Like, they
very
usually are the clutch. I was just going to say, they are usually the clutch one that comes in. Like, that Morph is going to be the one that delivers the right blow to help, pull the ties whatever direction.
Well, you never have to be like, oh, I wish, I wish Magneto was here if he might be on a different mission. You're like, actually, Magneto is here in power. That's pretty cool. And you actually have every single, and it doesn't have to just be a mutation either. Like, we've seen Morph turn into Spider-Man. Like,
that's what I mean.
Just in this episode. So you can, any sort of super ability, Morph has got it. So you've got that on your team. How cool is that?
Exactly. So I do like that they got some screen time. I think looking deeper into the relationship between Logan and Morph is something that I really did enjoy. Again, I don't know where it's going to go from here, because there is a level of trust that was broken in their friendship. I think there's feelings that were hurt with the fact that Morph didn't feel that Logan trusted them with that information, or the fact that they felt the type of way, not having their adamantium and things of that nature. Like, there's clearly going to be, I think, a slight dynamic change in the team overall. And I think we'll see that moving forward, but I think it's going to be subtle, because again, we have a lot more kind of coming at us post this episode.
Yeah, I agree. And I also just have to give a major shout out that it's maybe not the last shot of the episode, but it's one of the last shots where you see Wolverine looking at his reflection in the claws, and then on the other side of the screen it's Morph kind of giving him side eye. That is such a good like representation of the kind of the rift between them now, and the real cause, which is again like Wolverine needing to bulk himself up is not the right term, but like that's what the term I'm going to use, like basically get himself ready to, claw people in the way that he likes to claw people again. And that lack of communication with Morph. And I think that conversation that they had in the jet too is really interesting, where Morph is trying to tell him, like, you don't have to just be, a warrior. Because if you think about who Wolverine selected for this mission, I'm going to focus on Sabretooth and Lady Deathstrike. Like, they are pieces of Logan's past from a time when he was not an X-Man, if I'm remembering correctly, or at least not as far along in his journey of like learning how to be vulnerable and emote and do those things. And Morph has been here for him as part of that journey, right? Being able to build those trusting relationships. And so I think the other thing to think about too is, Morph is sitting here thinking he brought along these people that don't bring out the best in him. And Morph is trying to tell him, you can be better, you can be more, you know? And Wolverine is kind of going back to his baser instinct, his, level set, if you will, which is super interesting, but also not surprising. The man just went through something extremely traumatic. Of course, he's going to go back to, the version of him he knows, and the version of him that's macho and, never has anything wrong or never has to, feel any vulnerability, because he was the most vulnerable he's ever been, watching the adamantium be ripped out of his body. So I think there's just a lot going on too, like very psychologically with Logan, and it'll be interesting to see how much of that is focused on and like is explored in the future episodes.
Yeah, no, I agree. The only thing I don't like about these types of episodes is sometimes they're not finished.
Yeah.
And because there is so much going on in the bigger storyline, we don't get to really, I don't know, like see the full fallout almost of it, or like really continue the character's story beyond what we just saw. So as much as I would like to see more of it in future episodes, I don't actually know how much we're going to get to see it, unfortunately.
Well, it could be something that's like delayed too, because I think if you think about, the Jubilee episode, right, with the Motendo or whatever, that was something that we complained about endlessly. And then it wasn't until season 2 that we were like, oh, I kind of see why she needed to go through that experience. Maybe there's something like Storm's episode, if I'm remembering correctly, she had to, face her fears and all those things and come to terms with her refine the value in being a mutant, and find acceptance in herself as a mutant. That may pay off later this season. That may pay off next season. I think it's interesting because they're not always like immediate effects, and you have to kind of keep chugging along, and then you reach an episode or a specific moment in an episode where you're like, actually, this is the payoff from that, deep emotional journey that they went on the season or two before, because they are more subtle, psychological, like truly character driven growth moments. It's not always like an immediate next episode we're going to see Logan like opening up to people. Like that might happen two seasons from now, and we'll look back at this episode and say he learned his lesson. Like he's learned that there are people who are truly in his corner, and not everybody's going to sit there and betray him.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. I think what's going to be interesting, and maybe I'm going to play devil's advocate to my own point, is he now has to debut brand new claws to his team.
Yeah.
So I think there has to be a slight topic of conversation regarding this journey, because it's not like a hidden thing. And it's also not something that, like Storm getting her powers back, I feel like that was just like such a different type of journey than going back. Because at the end of the day, guys, obviously, if we're going to level set, the adamantium skeleton is not part of his mutation.
Right.
His mutation is his healing factor. That is his primary mutation. It's a great mutation.
Well, and the claws, the bones.
Well, right. But I just mean like the primary one is the healing factor. That's what makes him so, for lack of better words, indestructible. That is why Magneto could literally rip his skeleton out of his body, because he was going to heal. It's why Logan is still alive and ages slower than everybody else. Like that is the primary mutation. And so at the end of the day, he didn't go to fix his mutation. He went to fix something that was arguably already extremely traumatic the first time. And he kind of sort of didn't ask for, but kind of sort of volunteered. It's a little bit of a gray area how that goes down, really. But like he was still being tortured at the end of the day. And so he went back to get it not done the exact same way, but done again, so that he could have this skeleton back that he didn't entirely ask to have. So it's just, I think there's such a weird concept on that of how that's going to kind of go down. Very different than Storm's journey of getting her mutate or like reactivating her mutation. So I do think maybe I walk it back a little and say there has to be some level of conversation. I hope it's not like a throwaway line. I do hope there's a little bit of... I have a feeling
it might be, to be honest. Because I think he's going to downplay it. Because that's who he is as a character. Especially knowing now he's facing ramifications with his closest friendship on the team because of it.
Well,
I
and
can
also,
see Scott calling him out and being like, "What's with the new claws?" And Wolverine just
I
being
was gonna
like,
say it's definitely
"None of your
Scott.
business, Boy Scout."
Yeah, it's definitely gonna be Scott for one. But two,
Yeah,
I also,
of course it
if
is.
you really, well,
I
if
mean,
you
that's
really
how
think,
Morph baited him,
correct,
which was iconic.
yeah, I mean that's fair. But also, if you think about it, everybody's also just getting back.
Yeah.
So I think there's kind of a lot more going on than just that. But I do hope there's a little bit more to it, just because I do think there's a lot of levels. I mean, Logan as a character is very interesting. There's a lot of levels to him. Just his history, everything about it is just, and I know that the show itself cannot spend all its time talking about Wolverine. I mean, the movies already try to do that, and they still
I mean,
couldn't
he's the only one who got his own movie.
Right. And they still couldn't even spend all their time talking about him and really digesting who he is as a character. So I don't expect them to be able to, but I kind of would like to be able to see a little bit of that conversation with even Professor X. I could kind of see him maybe being a little bit more forward with Professor X, because I think he's the only one too who can literally call him out and be like, I've been in your mind.
I don't know that Professor X is going to be in the state of mind to be caring all that much about what Logan's doing, to be honest.
Fair. No, that's fair. That's fair.
All right. I think we've talked about kind of the thematic elements of the episode. I want to go through some of and we're never going to hit all of them because this was an Easter egg filled episode. Yeah. But I want to talk through some of the major Easter eggs and characters that were included, or at least the ones that I immediately recognize. We've often mentioned in this episode, obviously Lady Deathstrike and Sabretooth, who are key characters to Wolverine's background. Even just the whole idea of the Weapon X program is, of course, how he gets his adamantium the first time. There were discs for a ton of characters, including X-23, which was really cool. I would kill to see an X-23 in this show at some point, maybe a few seasons from now. I think that would be amazing. Obviously, Wolverine had his own disc, Sabretooth. And then, of course, Katie's favorite, the Winter Soldier, had his own disc as well. So it was very cool to see that as well. And then the actual, disgusting bug things, the Brood, they were gross, but that was also something that's from the comics. So that was interesting to see as well. There were just a lot of, deep, not just deep cuts, but things that you had to literally pause and be like, let me look at this whole stack of discs in order to actually recognize some of the big names coming out of it.
Yeah, I would love to be able to look more into some of the other discs of who they actually are, character wise. Obviously, to your point, certain ones stood out more than others. I actually would love to know where the Winter Soldier one, where that Venn diagram goes. That would be really interesting. We'll never probably explore it, unfortunately, but I do think that would be really cool. I mean, obviously we have our knowledge of the Winter Soldier from the MCU Prosper, what they've created of the storyline, and a lot of that is still very accurate to his comic origin and things of that nature. Obviously cherry picked a little bit, a good bit, but still very on par. But I'd love to know where that overseas, because it wasn't the super soldier trials or things of that nature. It was specifically the Winter Soldier, speaking of Bucky. So I would just love to know where exactly that does overlap into the Weapon X program, what they were doing on him specifically.
Well, is it that they were doing things on him, or did they just get information from the Russians? Because don't forget, they also had Omega Red. And I don't know if Omega, I don't remember this either from past research or the original series. Whether Omega Red was involved in the Weapon X program at all, or whether that he was just simply a Russian.
Yeah, but they still had him.
But that's my point. Even if they didn't, weren't involved in his development, I guess they may have taken
I don't
him
mean
from
development. I just mean general testing, or what they were what were they doing? Because to me, they're tapes, right? That was the point. They're all or CDs of experiments and things that they're doing and things and all of that. So I'm curious if I would assume because they had Omega Red there that they at one point had the Winter Soldier there. Because, I mean, let's think about some of the other proof. Like, we know Wolverine was there. We know Sabretooth was there. So those are their tapes. So I'm kind of just curious to understand, like, what were they maybe doing with him?
I guess my question, though, is, like, because they got Omega Red, like, did they infiltrate a Russian site, get Omega Red, and then also get tapes of Bucky and, like, Bucky's brainwashing and all that? I don't know that
I'm going to
doubt.
I feel like
Weapon
that's a lot more. I doubt that's where that came from. Those were probably their homegrown CDs from their own testing.
I just don't know, like, when they would have had him, because
how'd they get Omega Red?
But that's why to me it makes more sense that they infiltrated a Russian base.
Yeah, but my point is like they could have, but then had the Winter Soldier. If like you see what I'm saying, like if your point is like, okay, well, if they infiltrated and they got Omega Red, who's to say they didn't do the same thing with the Winter Soldier and they're doing their own testing? Well, because we never
saw him. Like, to me, if we're gonna go on concrete, what they had in the lab, it was that they got Omega Red, and maybe that facility also had some of the tapes on the Winter Soldier.
I feel like you're creating a different story, though. Like, I feel
like you're creating this whole story about the Winter Soldier being there. No, like, I don't. I think you're like making a serious. No, you're making a serious leap in logic to assume that they had the Winter Soldier when it's so much easier to be like, here's Omega Red. And also, they probably had, like, this facility had files on the Winter Soldier, the Russians, and they just took those files. Because if you think about it, their whole goal was to create mindless soldiers. Who's the best mindless soldier there is?
Which is why they probably were using him for research purposes.
The tapes, not him.
I really think the tapes are their own tapes, my guy.
I simply do not understand what you're saying. Like, I think you are like creating this whole backstory for the Winter Soldier that like simply does not exist.
I don't think I am.
I think you are, dude. I think you're creating this whole thing.
I think you are.
No, I think you're like creating
they infiltrated a Russian base. What?
Because they have Omega Red.
How are you? Wait, how is mine a further leap than yours?
Because I'm looking at what they physically have in the site, at the site when they go there. And you're like, actually, at one point they had this whole other character.
I said at one point I would assume they had him, considering they had tapes on a million other characters.
All of which creations. Were like, I don't want to say all because I don't know all of them, but a lot of which, the ones that I recognize, were all Weapon X developed. Bucky is not Weapon X developed.
Which I understand.
Okay, we are getting down a rabbit hole that is like seriously not important.
It does, because I just feel like I don't know how you're saying.
Okay, we're done. We're done. Your leap and my leap are two different leaps. You all as fans can decide whose leap you want to follow.
You guys can decide whose leap is further. I just assumed it meant at some point they were doing research on the Winter Soldier. All those evil scientists talk.
Okay, Caitlin. You've made your point. We're done. We are letting the fans decide. Fans, you tell us. You tell us. Mm-hmm. But I will say too, the other thing that was interesting was watching Hive Mind or Brood Mind Wolverine. That dude was scary. Like, absolutely. And then he killed his own friend, which was like also like he's gonna have to live with that. I mean, obviously it wasn't like his own willpower, but that was sad. I mean, they have been killing mutants left and right in this show. I mean, they killed, what was it, Kane right out of the gate with the helicopter. Brutal. I was like, okay. And then they killed Wolverine, obviously killed Maverick. So they have not been shy about introducing mutants and like killing them pretty quickly.
No, I mean, it does make sense with some of the more like side characters that we won't inherently always see again. But I do want to clear, like, maybe have you clear something up for me? Because I think I was not entirely following this one section. Did Wolverine intend to get infected?
No.
Okay, I didn't think so.
No, so he was supposed to be going to the carport. He instead went to go get the adamantium, right?
Gotcha.
And I think they just happened.
They were in there.
Yeah. Well, and what did Sabretooth say? Like, oh, it was something about what they learned on the tapes about how the Brood like couldn't it wasn't working or something with all the other test subjects. And they were saying like, oh, Morph was like, oh, who has the best healing factor that we know of? So basically like Wolverine was the prime body to take over to like help them like mutate or whatever or something like that. I don't know. I'm not a scientist, but like he was the prime host. There we go. He was the prime host. And so they were going after him, but he wasn't intending to be infected.
Okay. Yeah, I think I just got a little lost in the shuffle of what was going on. And so then I was like, because I do know at one point Sabretooth had said like, all right, they're asking if anybody's infected, and everybody's like, no. And he straight up goes to Logan. He was like, are you? And then later on, he like even says, he's like, I knew you were. Like he was like, I knew he was going to. So that's why I was like, did he intend to get infected? Like I was like, wait.
I honestly think Sabretooth was just talking out of his butt because he's
Usually
like a huge baby.
Yes. Well, yes.
I love the character. I think he's endlessly entertaining, but like he's a huge baby.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Honestly, I think this is it for me. I think we talked a lot about, you know, what I wanted to cover for this episode. I'll be really interested to kind of get back to the main storyline hopefully next week and all things related to Apocalypse, see everybody reunited. But this was a fun little side quest with Logan, getting to, you know, revisit some characters specific to him. Katie, you're nodding, so I think this is your way of saying you are also good for this episode.
Yes, ma'am.
Make sure that you are following along with us as we continue covering the remainder of the season of X-Men 97. We've got some great SDCC things coming up for you since we'll be on site next week, as well as Spider-Man, which is coming up soon. So stay tuned for all of that coming down the pike. Make sure that you're following on your podcast platform of choice, and also the website and the Buy Me a Coffee links are in the show notes if you want to check those out.
You guys can also give us a follow on all of our socials, which are also linked in the show notes down below. And we will be back next week with X-Men 97 episode 6, hopefully back to the main storyline as things kind of heat up with Apocalypse. And we're excited. So we'll see you guys next week. As always, Marvel just blew your mind, so let's talk about it.
Thank you.